Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly into the sun-dappled world of ancient Carthage. Yes, that Carthage, the one that Hannibal made famous with elephants and a grudge. But forget the battlefield. Tonight, you're just trying to survive the daily grind as a spice seller on the humid streets of this Mediterranean trade hub. The first thing you notice, before you even open your eyes, is the sticky salt air clinging to your skin and the itchy telltale signature of a mosquito bite just above your left ankle. The buzzing offender is long gone, of course, and you're left groggily scratching and wishing you'd remembered to hang up that garlic string last night. The scent of olive oil and yesterday's sweat wafts in from the next room, where someone, probably your cousin Amilcar, is clanging around in the communal storage space. You're sleeping on a thin mat laid over what might be straw or just really ambitious sand, your back already complaining before your feet even touch the cool, worn tiles. Outside, the bray of donkeys and the occasional hoot of a sailor stumbling home from the docks blends with the distant clatter of amphora being unloaded. You rise, stretch, and try to ignore the dull ache in your knees. The sky is still a sleepy lavender, with the harbor's masts swaying like lazy reeds in the breeze. Welcome to Carthage, 3rd century BCE. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, drop your city and local time in the comments. I'm always amazed where you all tune in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step outside your modest home, which smells faintly of moldy grain and roasted chickpeas. The street's uneven stones are still cool beneath your sandals. A neighbor is already out, tossing kitchen scraps to a pair of hopeful cats. They watch you with those suspicious feline eyes that seem to ask, "Where's my anchovy?" Just across the way, the old man who sells fig syrup is muttering about his goat being hexed again. Honestly, it wouldn't be a normal day if he didn't. The sun creeps slowly over the terracotta rooftops, setting the city's sandstone walls aglow. You catch a breeze that brings with it the mingling scents of cedar, sea brine, and, unfortunately, a nearby latrine. Carthage is beautiful, yes, but even beauty gets clogged drains. You make your way toward the back courtyard where your spice cart is stored beneath a frayed canopy. It's rickety, smells faintly of turmeric, and one wheel squeaks in protest every time it moves. You're supposed to oil it, but the last jar of linseed was used to calm your uncle's hemorrhoids. Priorities. This morning, your task is simple. Survive until sundown. You have cinnamon bark, a dwindling bag of cloves, and enough cumin to ward off 3 mid-range curses. You've also got a small pouch of dried rose petals, which you should probably save for the temple priestess, but your spice rival Typhon keeps undercutting you with fake petals dyed with beet juice, so who knows? You're not just a seller. You're a juggler of aromas, a gossip catcher, an amateur pharmacist, and occasionally a scapegoat when the stew turns out wrong. As you check the cart's contents and brush off last night's beetle corpses, you hear the morning chant echo from the temple steps. It's soothing, rhythmic, and just loud enough to drown out the squeals of the butcher's pigs being dragged toward destiny. Historians still argue whether Carthaginian households worshipped one god or many, or whether they just covered their bets and lit incense to whoever was listening. You, personally, stick to Baal Hammon, mostly because his idol looks the least judgmental. Your cousin passes by with an empty wine jug, offering you a wink and a half-eaten date. You decline. You know where that date's been. Now, fully awake and slightly sticky, you haul your cart over the lip of the courtyard, avoiding the broken tile that sliced your toe last week. The wheel catches, as usual, and you mutter something unflattering under your breath about its craftsmanship. Above you, gulls wheel and cry, probably arguing over a piece of salted mackerel. Below them, Carthage stretches toward the sea. Tiered homes, narrow lanes, hidden gardens, rooftop pigeons, and that ever-present scent of living too close to one another. You pause, take a deep breath of cumin-laced morning air, and prepare for another glorious, exhausting, spice-filled day. Just you, your squeaky cart, and a city that never shuts up. You shuffle back inside to grab a quick breakfast and check the household chaos for damage. Your cousin Amilcar, barefoot and shirtless, is already grumbling over the hearth, waving away smoke from a scorched barley cake like it personally insulted him. The kitchen smells like someone tried to boil vinegar in a sandal, which, considering last night's hangover remedies, isn't impossible. "Did you use the old olive oil again?" you ask. He shrugs. "It's got flavor now." You squint at the cracked clay bottle on the shelf. Yes, that oil's gone cloudy and possibly sentient. Still, breakfast is breakfast. You tear off a corner of blackened bread and chew, pretending it's not fighting back. The barley's gritty, but the fig paste on top helps a little. You eye the sesame jar, wondering if it's worth the family argument to drizzle some. It isn't. In the corner, your youngest sister is trying to catch a lizard with a bit of string and the broken half of a ladle. She shrieks with triumph as it darts up the wall and disappears into the rafters. "It blinked at me," she says, as if this were evidence of witchcraft. You nod solemnly. Everything is witchcraft before coffee. You check your storage amphorae, your lifeline for the day. The cumin stalk's looking all right, but the anise seeds have clumped again. You shake the jar gently, as if soothing a colicky baby. The last of your imported cassia is sealed in wax, which you could sell to that picky perfumer, assuming he doesn't try to sniff it directly from your hand again. Seriously, that man has no boundaries. The house cat, named Hannibal because he yowls like he's leading an elephant charge, slithers between your ankles as you move, tail high and imperial. He's only friendly when you're slicing dried dates. Classic. Historians still argue whether domestic life in Carthage leaned more matriarchal or patriarchal. Judging from the kitchen, it's whatever system allows your aunt to yell the loudest and everyone else to pretend they're already leaving. You grab a quick splash of water from the cistern to wash your face. It's colder than expected, and your left eye starts twitching from the shock. Across the alley, a neighbor is arguing with her brother over goat dung, again. Apparently someone's been fertilizing too aggressively. You make a mental note not to buy cabbage from them this week. Back inside, you strap on your trade belt, check your coin pouch, still depressingly light, and pull your headscarf over your curls. You're not fancy, but you've got enough layers to pass as reliable instead of desperate. That's the key look in the spice game. Amilcar tosses you a wrapped packet. That's the new batch of coriander. The good stuff. You sniff it, earthy, citrusy, and surprisingly fresh. You raise an eyebrow. You didn't trade away your shoes again, did you? He grins. They didn't fit right anyway. You stifle a sigh, thank him, and tuck the bundle into your bag. As you pass through the threshold, you pause to rub a thumb across the small household idol embedded in the doorframe, a weathered carving of Tanit, goddess of fertility and protection. Whether you believe in her or not, you figure it doesn't hurt. The charm's been kissed by every family member on the way out for 3 generations, and you're not going to be the one who breaks the streak. Outside, the sun is climbing. Already, beads of sweat are forming along your back. You brace yourself for the march downhill. Just as you turn the corner from your alley, you see the baker's apprentice hauling fresh loaves in a reed basket. The scent makes your stomach grumble with betrayal. You just ate, but now you want that bread. You give the kid a nod and he throws you a stub of crust. Bless his prepubescent generosity. You bite in, still warm. 2 kids zip past, barefoot and shrieking, one clutching a clay whistle shaped like a camel. The other is wearing a tunic 2 sizes too big and proudly dragging a dead rat on a string. You blink. That's a choice. The child waves. You wave back, because Carthage. The neighbor woman with the suspicious cabbage appears at her window just in time to shout, "Don't forget your aunt wants dried hibiscus." You shout back, "Tell her she still owes me fennel." The windowsill argument is a daily ritual. You'd miss it if it stopped. Down by the courtyard well, a group of older men are already deep into a loud debate over Carthage's newest building tax. One man insists it's the fault of the Greeks. Another blames the cost of painted tiles. A third, completely unrelated to the argument, offers a long monologue about how pickled onions have gone downhill since 10 years ago. You nod politely and keep moving. You step back into the house one last time to grab your price board, more symbolic than functional, since no one actually pays what's listed. Prices in Carthage are more like polite suggestions you're expected to ignore. And then, with a full breath, you push your cart out toward the streets. The city awaits, with its clamor, its heat, its smells, and its promises. You've barely survived breakfast, and already your sandals are sticking to the stones. Your cart, bless its wheezing wooden sole, creaks in protest as you steer it through the narrow alley toward the main street. One wheel still wobbles like it's auditioning for a tragic play, but at least the axle hasn't snapped. Yet. You give it a pat, whispering a little bribe to Tanit to keep it intact through sundown. First stop, the neighborhood square. Not the big market near the harbor. That's chaos reserved for festivals and visiting Roman dignitaries. This little plaza is your daily stomping ground. The regulars know your name, your spice lineup, and your opinion on dill. Underrated. You adjust your scarf and take stock. Cardamom? Check. Sumac? Barely. Dried lemon rind? Hiding under the broken scale. You really need to get a better container for that. It keeps absorbing the scent of whatever it's near, and now it smells like salted anchovies. As you pass under a low lintel into the square, you're immediately ambushed. "Spice boy," squawks your neighbor Tyra, the fishmonger's mother-in-law. She's waving a wooden spoon and waddling toward you like a storm in human form. "You sold me moldy coriander last week." You blink. "Tyra, I don't even have coriander half the time." "You had it, and it was fuzzy." "It was probably fennel fluff, Tyra." She narrows her eyes, then shrugs. Fine. I'll take 2 pinches of saffron and 1 insult to go. You oblige. You look lovely today, like an overripe pomegranate in the sun. She beams. Sale complete. As you unpack your wares, a few neighbors stop by to chat. You offer a sniff of cassia bark to an elderly man who claims it helps his knees, though it's possible he just likes pretending he's rich. A small cluster of children gather nearby, whispering and pointing at your cart like it's made of gold. Then comes the gossip. Always the gossip. You hear that the baker's daughter is secretly seeing a Numidian soldier, that the temple cat vanished and reappeared 2 days later, covered in purple dye, that someone's cousin brought back peppercorns from a pirate raid, and now she thinks she's a flavor prophet. You smile politely. Your job isn't just selling spices. It's knowing who to sell them to and how. Some customers want facts. Others want a show. And some, like the woman currently sniffing your nutmeg like it owes her money, just want to complain. A few stalls down, Typhon sets up his own cart. You glance over. He catches your eye and lifts a packet of turmeric like it's a trophy. 3 drachmas a scoop, he calls, and mine doesn't smell like feet. You raise an eyebrow. Because it tastes like them instead? His customers chuckle. You win this round. Typhon used to sell olive oil until he spilled an entire amphora on a senator's wife. Now he's your main competition in the mildly exotic powders category. He's flashy, loud, and always insists on saying spice merchant instead of spice seller. You suspect it's because he embroidered it on a tunic once and refuses to waste the investment. Historians still argue whether Carthaginian spice trading was formalized under merchant guilds or more of a loose, street-based economy. You personally think it was the latter, based on how many deals happen while someone's holding a fig pastry. A customer approaches, young, freckled, wide-eyed. Probably a visiting merchant's apprentice or someone's cousin from the countryside. What's that? He asks, pointing to your jar of dried galangal root. Miracle wood, you say. Cures headaches, chases away bad dreams, and makes you look slightly more interesting in candlelight. He nods solemnly. I'll take 2. You pretend to measure it carefully. He's not going to check. As you pack his purchase in a scrap of linen, the local weaver stops by to trade. She needs saffron, and she's got a bolt of indigo-dyed fabric that makes your heart ache with longing. You can't afford the full piece, so she cuts you a swatch, just enough to make a head wrap. You hand her 2 spoonfuls of saffron and a joke about her husband's sandals. Deal done. A priest's apprentice hovers near your stall, eyeing the myrrh with suspicion. He's probably looking for something for the temple incense, but trying to seem disinterested so you'll drop the price. You don't take the bait. Instead, you lift a pouch of dried rose petals and shake it gently. Smells like a goddess on laundry day. He twitches. Victory. By mid-morning, the square is buzzing. A woman with 4 children tries to buy half your stash of sumac. An old man hands you a dried fig as payment and winks. You accept it. Honestly, it's probably worth more than the coin he would have used. The breeze shifts. You catch a whiff of roasted chickpeas and garlic from the corner stall, and your stomach rumbles in protest. Soon, you'll need to decide whether to buy lunch or barter for it. Either way, you'll need to sneak in a break before the noon heat turns your cart into a clay oven. The morning's almost over, and you haven't spilled anything, offended any minor officials, or been cursed by an herbalist. That counts as a win in Carthage. Your cart clatters out of the square and into the next set of streets, where the real navigation begins, not through roads, but through people. Carthage isn't a city of straight lines and quiet strolls. It's a city that insists you dodge, pivot, apologize, and occasionally leap. Already, someone's shouting. "Move, you ox cart of a man!" yells a silk vendor, lugging an unreasonably wide basket of scarves. You sidestep, only for a loose chicken to peck at your sandal. You swear it's the same chicken that chased you last week. You glare. It glares back. The rivalry continues. The stone streets shimmer slightly with heat. You can feel the warmth through your soles, rising up into your legs like the city is trying to cook you from the feet up. You maneuver around a procession of temple musicians in linen tunics, their flutes and tambourines sending out a peppy rhythm that almost hides the clanging of pots two vendors are arguing over. You pass under an archway strung with hanging baskets of dried herbs, their dusty perfume clinging to your face like invisible cobwebs. Rosemary, thyme, something unidentifiable. You sneeze. A passing merchant blesses you. You bless him back, mostly out of habit. A sacred goose waddles in front of you with absolute entitlement. You break the cart just in time. The goose stares you down as if daring you to honk back. Behind it, a cluster of priests shuffle by, murmuring something about an upcoming feast. You try to listen, but all you catch is lamb, stars, and regret. That sounds about right for a religious holiday. Historians still argue whether Carthage's streets followed any sort of city planning, or if they just grew outward like spilled wine. Walking them feels more like threading a loom than following a map. You've lived here your whole life, and even you still get lost near the granary if you're not paying attention. A shout rings out from an upper window. A woman tosses out a clay chamber pot. You instinctively step back and just avoid being splashed with yesterday's dinner. The man behind you is not so lucky. He looks up, curses creatively, and gets no apology. You make the sign of Tanit and keep walking. "Spices, rare and honest," you call out as you roll your cart onward. "Tastier than your neighbor's cooking and only half as suspicious." Someone claps from a doorway. You pass by the old public bulletin wall, really just a chipped slab of sandstone with various announcements painted and scratched into it. Today's notices include: "Lost goat answers to thunder." "Looking for a wife who can cook and doesn't talk to birds." "Temple incense contest results postponed due to fire." All highly relevant news. You contribute by drawing a tiny smiley face in sandalwood dust. Community engagement. You detour through an alley where you know a shortcut, but unfortunately, so does every dog in the neighborhood. You squeak past a pack of sleepy hounds napping in the shade, carefully avoiding tails and the ominous wet spot near the wall. A mutt opens one eye. You nod respectfully. It yawns and lets you live. At the next turn, the Numidian widow is waiting. She's planted herself at her usual corner, next to the potter's shop, with a basket of garlic bulbs and a firm belief that everyone is overcharging her, including you. 3 coins for cumin? Are you trying to rob me? She demands. You asked for the good cumin? That's imported. From where? The moon? You pause dramatically. From the east, where they walk barefoot on spice roads and whisper to camels. She squints, then hands you 2.5 coins and a date pit. You accept it. That's a better rate than last week. Tell your mother I'm still mad about the wedding, she adds, cryptically. You nod. She says that every time. No one knows what wedding she means. As you press on, a group of children run past playing a game that seems to involve yelling the name of a Roman senator and then hiding under carts. One of them darts under yours, nearly tipping it. You catch it in time and shout after him, "If you break my ginger jar, I'm selling you next." He laughs like it's the funniest thing he's heard all week. Maybe it is. Ahead, the crowd thickens. A pair of heavily perfumed tourists block the way, probably from Alexandria, judging by the gold-threaded robes and confused expressions. One of them points at your cart and asks, "Is this the honey stand?" "No," you say, "but if you eat enough mace, everything tastes like honey." They nod, clearly impressed, and shuffle off to confuse another vendor. Finally, you arrive at your midday corner, your next selling spot before the real heat kicks in. It's got a bit of shade, a nice echo for shouting prices, and best of all, a gossiping circle of older women who never stop talking and never stop buying cloves. You pull your cart into place, wipe your brow, and let out a breath that tastes like road dust and ambition. You've survived another round of Carthaginian street ballet. Your reward? Maybe a pinch of dried fig and the joy of not being goose-bitten. Yet, you barely get your cart into position when the marketplace begins to bubble around you like a stew that's forgotten it's on the fire. This plaza, larger than the square you started in, is halfway between chaos and choreography. It's surrounded by low walls, bits of crumbling statuary, and a scattering of trees that pretend to provide shade, but mostly just drop sticky leaves on your stock. You tug your awning into place, frayed linen tied with a rope that's older than you care to admit, and pray to every known deity that it doesn't collapse again mid-sail. It still smells faintly of cardamom and wet goat from that one time it rained during a shipment. You don't like to talk about that day. Spices, real ones, better than typhons, you call out, loudly enough for him to hear. 2 stalls down, Typhon raises his chin and smiles with that oily smugness that makes you consider weaponizing nutmeg. He's already set up, naturally, his canopy a little too clean, his jars a little too full. You're 90% sure he fluffs his saffron with yellow lichen. You'd report him, but the market inspector is his cousin. The first customer of this round is a Roman tourist wearing sandals so new they squeak. His toga is so bright it hurts your eyes. He looks at your spice cart like it's a museum exhibit he's unsure is safe to touch. "Do you have saffron?" he asks, in painfully slow Punic. "Of course," you say. "Imported, pricey, potent, not responsible for dreams of dancing women." He looks horrified. You grin and hand him a pinch to smell. His eyes flutter like a man sniffing a poem. He pays without haggling. You love Romans. Next, a child appears at your elbow, pretending to examine the mace. He's doing a terrible job of pretending. His fingers inch toward your bowl of cumin. "Nice try," you say, not even looking. If you want to steal, do it properly. Commit. He bolts. You flick a bean at his retreating form, missing by inches. You take a moment to rearrange your jars. Always a good move mid-morning, makes it look like you're selling fast. You pile up the dried mint leaves, recork the bottle of cinnamon oil, and sweep a few errant coriander seeds off the edge of the cart. They're always rolling off like tiny traitors. A local woman approaches with her daughter in tow. She wants something to make my stew less like regret. You recommend a blend of smoked paprika and fennel seeds. Her daughter tries to touch everything. You hand her a piece of tamarind. She makes a face. You win. Historians still argue whether Carthaginian cuisine was mild or spicy. Based on what's been recovered, it might have depended on income. The rich had pepper and saffron. The rest of you? Cumin, garlic, and a prayer. Behind you, someone yells about a stolen eel. Ahead, a group of musicians starts playing something you think is supposed to be celebratory, but mostly sounds like pots being kicked down a staircase. You hum along anyway. Just as you're settling into a rhythm, a very round man with a heavy mustache and a clipboard approaches. The tax collector. He's wearing the official blue sash of someone who enjoys making your day worse. Name, he says, not looking up. You smile too hard. You know my name. I want to hear you say it. Spice cellar number 32, you say with a sigh. District 7, outer quadrant. He scribbles. Do you have a license for that nutmeg? Do you have a license to question my nutmeg? He doesn't laugh. You hand over a token from last month's market dues. Still under review, he says, circling something ominous-looking on his wax tablet. You briefly consider bribery. It wouldn't be the first time. You reach into your satchel and pull out a small pouch of coriander, fragrant, fresh, just enough to suggest goodwill without being obvious. He sniffs it, pockets it, and mutters something about proper weight ratios before waddling away. You exhale. Two elderly men wander past, debating loudly whether ginger can actually ward off plague or just make you feel better about dying. You offer them a sample and tell them, either way, it helps the stew. One buys a scoop. The other just nods like you've confirmed a conspiracy. A group of children return to the edge of your stall, still buzzing from sugar or mischief. They point at your licorice root like it's a magic wand. One dares another to lick it. He does. Regret is immediate. Meanwhile, your eye catches a young couple, hands intertwined, giggling as they whisper over your rose-petal jar. He buys a sachet. You include a pinch of cinnamon. Romance deserves cinnamon. And just when you think the tide is ebbing, a donkey breaks loose from somewhere nearby and charges through the marketplace like it has urgent theological opinions. You leap backward, pulling your cart just in time. The donkey grazes Typhon's stall instead, knocking over his jar of mustard seeds. You try very hard not to laugh, failing completely. The midday sun starts to lean heavier now, warming your scalp and making the jars gleam like treasure chests. You mop your brow with a strip of linen and sit on the edge of your cart for a minute. Around you, Carthage buzzes with life. Too loud, too bright, too much, and exactly as it should be. The heat presses down like a linen blanket someone forgot to wring out. Even the shade under your awning feels warm and sluggish. The jars of oil shimmer. Your cumin smells spicier than usual, as if it's trying to fight the sun with pure personality. You slump onto your crate, legs stiff, and take a deep sip from your water skin. It's lukewarm, tastes faintly of leather, and still manages to be the best thing you've had all day. Right on cue, your first regular of the afternoon appears. Lauro, the baker with flour in his beard and a laugh that sounds like a hiccup wrapped in a sneeze. "You've got the good fennel today?" he asks, panting from the effort of walking 15 feet in the sun. "I've got fennel that could resurrect a flatbread," you say. He laughs, wheezes, and pulls out a coin. It's slightly bent, possibly chewed. "Don't make me haggle," he says. "It's too hot for haggling." You nod and scoop him a handful. A few moments later, you're visited by Mariette, an old friend who used to be a singer at the amphitheater before her voice went the way of her patience. She stops by your stall not to buy, but to harass you. "Still pretending that's real cardamom, huh?" she says with a grin. "It's genuine," you say. "Mostly. Last time I used it, my stew tasted like wet linen and regret." "Maybe that was your stew." She throws her head back and laughs like a bell tower collapsing. You love her visits. She doesn't buy anything today, but she always leaves a peach pit or a shell or something curious. Today it's a polished bead made of some unknown resin. "Looks like amber," she says. "Might be from the Greeks, or just a really shiny bug." You thank her and tuck it into your pouch like treasure. Every spice seller needs a little magic. Next comes a philosopher. You don't know his name, only that he wears 2 different sandals, talks to himself, and occasionally tries to pay in ideas. Today he's ranting about how mustard seeds represent chaos. "I mean, think about it," he says, holding one up between 2 fingers. "So small, so much potential. An empire in a kernel." You nod, because that seems like the safest response. He offers you a poem in exchange for some cloves. It's about death, digestion, and ducks. You give him the cloves, not because the poem's good, it's not, but because you once saw him cry over a basket of apricots, and you respect that kind of vulnerability. A clatter draws your attention. One of your jars, your prized nutmeg, has toppled. Fortunately, the lid stays on. You set it upright and catch the gaze of Typhon again. He's been watching. Of course he has. He saunters over, holding a small jar of something suspiciously green. "Want a trade?" he says, grinning. "What is it?" "Basil." You frown. "That's mint." "No, this is mint." He pulls out a second jar, which looks exactly the same. "Typhon, that's just 2 jars of leaves." "Exotic leaves." "From your backyard, Typhon." He shrugs. "People like stories. Tell them it came from across the sea." You stare at him. "That's your storytelling strategy?" He leans in, whispering, "It's also oregano." You wave him off. "Go fall into a fountain." "Already did this morning," he says cheerfully, and strolls away. Historians still argue whether Carthaginian markets operated under strict oversight or the raw chaos of gossip and charm. From where you're standing, it's obviously the latter. No one trusts a seller who isn't at least a little dramatic. A new customer approaches, middle-aged, sunburned, clutching a clay pot with what looks like a dying herb inside. "Help me save this," he pleads. "My wife says I'm not allowed to name it until it lives." You peer at the wilted thing. It's probably time. Is that a joke? No, but now it is. You hand him a blend of potash, ground cinnamon, and dried kelp flakes. Steep this, water the base, tell it a secret. Is the secret important? Only if you want the plant to like you. He nods solemnly and walks away with the confidence of a man who's about to spend the afternoon talking to dirt. It's not all jokes and rescue herbs, though. You get a few serious requests, too. A woman comes with a sick child strapped to her back, eyes bleary, nose crusted from days of fever. She wants something to ease the dreams. You give her crushed chamomile, mint, and the last of your dried lavender. No charge. She doesn't thank you. She just nods, the kind of nod that feels like a prayer. And just when your stock is starting to dip, a familiar shadow falls across the stall. "Did you save any for me?" It's the local perfumer, eyes lined with kohl and robes smelling like 10 flowers and 1 regrettable clove. You hand over the bundle you set aside earlier, dried petals, powdered amber, and 2 slivers of rare galbanum resin. He sniffs it, sighs, and slips you 3 perfect coins and 1 kiss on the cheek. "You're too kind," he says. "You say that every time." "Because you are." You smile, heart just a little lighter. The sun is shifting now, angling down toward the rooftops. The colors change, from gold to brass to the shade of old honey. A few jars are nearly empty. That's good. That's survival. You stretch your arms, roll your neck, and consider a nap. But the day's not done, not yet. More cumin to sell, more people to tease, more chaos to come. You feel it before you see him. The tax collector is back. Because of course he is. You catch a glimpse of his blue sash swaying like a smug flag of bureaucracy as he waddles toward your stall. The man radiates a level of self-importance typically reserved for generals or cats. He stops right in front of your cart and peers down at your spice jars like he's inspecting contraband. "I forgot to ask earlier," he says, voice syrupy and slow. "Do you have a license for licorice root?" You blink. "That's not a thing, Marquos." "It might be," he replies. "It should be." You plaster on your best, "I don't want trouble" smile. "Marquos, I once saw you eat 3 stuffed olives and fall asleep in a fountain. Don't make me dig up witnesses." He narrows his eyes. "There's also a new fee for saffron sellers. It's in the works." "Historians still argue whether you do anything," you mutter, mostly to yourself. He hears it anyway, but pretends not to. He accepts another small bribe, this time in the form of half a pouch of sumac, and scribbles a note in his wax tablet like he just uncovered a crime ring. Then, with the self-satisfaction of a man who's earned a nap, he disappears into the crowd. You exhale slowly, then lean back against your stall. The breeze carries the scent of someone frying chickpea cakes nearby, and for a moment, the whole street feels like a kitchen. It's a lovely illusion, until the heat reminds you your armpits have officially declared war. "Want one?" comes a voice to your left. It's Larsa, the vendor who sells lentil stew in terracotta bowls. She's waving a steaming bite of crispy edge in your face like it's a peace offering. You accept it gratefully. "Still underselling yourself," she says, munching her own. "Still overcooking your garlic," you shoot back. She shrugs. "Burnt equals flavor." You roll your eyes. The chickpea cake is hot, crunchy, greasy, and the best thing you've eaten all week. Even your cumin seems to agree, perking up in the bowl next to you. Then, as if summoned by food, a young man approaches wearing a too-fancy tunic and a smile he probably uses to get free olives. He waves a scroll at you. "My master wants to know if you can provide 50 bundles of cinnamon bark for a banquet," he says, "preferably before sunset." You blink. 50? Why? Who's hosting? Baal Hammon himself. Governor's nephew. Big birthday. Very important. You tap your fingers on the crate behind you. You have the cinnamon. You could part with it, but it would wipe out your stock and leave you spiceless for 2 days. You'd also have to cancel that shady peppercorn pickup you arranged for tonight. Decisions, decisions. "How many coins?" you ask. 30. You snort. "Try 60, and I'll throw in something to make the roast pork sing." He raises an eyebrow. You drive a hard bargain. I drive a squeaky cart and pay bribes with cumin. This is survival. He laughs and agrees. Deal struck. You start wrapping bundles with twine, hands moving fast and sure. By the time the courier's gone, your cinnamon jar is almost empty, your coin pouch is heavy, and you feel exactly 12% more powerful. You lean back and stretch. A couple walks by arm in arm, the woman balancing a basket of figs on her head. She smiles at you, and you nod back, pretending not to notice how much sweat is currently collecting behind your knees. The sun has dipped just enough to cast longer shadows. The temple bells begin to ring in the distance, deep, resonant tones that vibrate in your chest more than your ears. And just as you're considering wrapping up for the afternoon, a figure you didn't expect steps up to your stall. A priestess. Specifically, the priestess. High-ranking, gold-threaded shawl. Eyes like polished black stone. She doesn't ask. She expects. You lower your head slightly, out of habit. "I require a blend," she says, "for an incense ritual tonight." You nod. "What kind?" "Divine. Rare. Not too floral." You set to work, your fingers knowing the routine. A touch of myrrh, some crushed rosewood, a pinch of cardamom for mystery, 1 sliver of amber resin, the last one you've got. The scent begins to rise, subtle and reverent. A small white cat with a gold collar jumps onto your cart. The temple cat. It stares at you. You stare back. "Don't pet it," the priestess warns. "I wasn't going to," you lie. The cat blinks slowly, as if acknowledging your cowardice. You hand the blend over in a sealed pouch. She places 2 silver coins into your palm, more than fair, and walks off without a word. The cat lingers a moment longer, knocks over a jar of mint with its paw, and then saunters after her, tail held high like a banner of disdain. You sigh. You glance over your remaining stock. Thinner now, but respectable. You survived the tax collector, a surprise order, and a feline intimidation campaign. That's more than most can say by mid-afternoon. The sun begins its slow lean toward the sea, and with it comes the dreaded late-afternoon heat, the kind that doesn't burn so much as settle on your shoulders, like a toddler made of lava. Your shirt clings to your back. Your breath feels heavy with spice dust. You swear even your cumin is starting to sweat. This is the time of day when you start asking big questions. Questions like, why am I doing this? Would it be socially acceptable to nap under my cart? Do I really need to own 2 kidneys, or could I trade one for a fan? You're interrupted from these noble musings by a crack, the unmistakable sound of one of your sandal straps giving out. You freeze. You lift your foot. The sandal dangles uselessly, the strap torn clean through. The left one, naturally. The one that was already patched with twine and basil stem because someone, Amilcar, said that was an ancient repair method. You sigh, step behind your cart, and get to work. You rummage in your satchel and pull out a length of reed cord. It's frayed and smells faintly of garlic, but beggars and spice sellers can't be choosers. You tie a knot, wrap it through the sandal holes, then loop it around your ankle like you're trying to reinvent footwear with 5 coins and a prayer. It holds. Barely. A few curious onlookers chuckle. One of them, a honey seller with crooked teeth and kind eyes, hands you a plum out of pity. You accept it, because pride doesn't taste as sweet. A breeze picks up, finally. It's weak, but real. It carries with it the mingled scents of roasting fish, ripe olives, wet stone, and dust that's been cooking since sunrise. Carthage in 4 notes. You prop yourself against the side of your cart and take in the scene. Children run barefoot, their feet black with street soot and joy. An old woman is scolding a pigeon in a language you don't understand. A man with a lute is playing the same 3 notes over and over again, either practicing or plotting psychological warfare. It's beautiful. It's terrible. It's home. Then, just as you take a bite of your pity plum, your spice rival Typhon appears again. "Lovely day for trade," he says, grinning. You narrow your eyes. He's up to something. He's always up to something. "What did you do?" He shrugs. "Just made a small deal with the olive importer." "What kind of deal?" "The kind that involves undercutting your prices on fennel by half." You stare at him. "Half? That's below harvest cost." "I know," he says, sighing dramatically. "It's not about profit. It's about dominance." You take another bite of your plum. "Tell me, Typhon, when you sleep at night, do your ancestors visit you to say they're disappointed?" "No," he says brightly. "They bring me marketing ideas." You shake your head. This is why he still sleeps in his mother's courtyard. Still, you can't let him win. You grab your jar of fennel, set it prominently on the cart, and, purely by accident, knock it over. Seeds cascade in a majestic arc, hitting the ground like dry rain. Everyone within earshot turns to look. You freeze. Typhon smirks. Then, a miracle. A passing goat trots over, sniffs the fennel pile, and begins to munch enthusiastically. A child gasps. "Even the goat knows it's good." Typhon's smirk dies. You don't say a word. You just give the goat a nod of thanks. The goat continues to eat fennel like it's the secret to eternal youth. Within minutes, a small crowd has gathered. People ask what other spices goats love. You make up a list on the spot. Someone buys ginger. Another wants mint for their cousin's parrot. You don't even question it. Sometimes the city rewards you in weird ways. Historians still argue whether street vendors in Carthage had permanent customer bases or relied on spectacle and spontaneity. You're living proof that the answer is yes. The moment slows. A woman with salt and pepper hair buys your last of the marjoram. A merchant's assistant offers to trade a bolt of cloth for your preserved lemons. You hesitate. Lemons are rare, but the cloth is striped in green and gold, and you know a temple cook who'd kill for it. Deal made. You're down to the dregs now. A little mint, some dried chervil, and that stubborn bundle of stale anise that no one ever wants, not even out of pity. You sit back, exhale, and feel your shoulders drop for the first time in hours. You glance upward. The sun hangs low and golden, spilling long shadows across the alleyways and warming the bricks into deep hues of red and bronze. A column of smoke from a rooftop hearth curls into the sky. The birds have returned, swooping low, looking for crumbs and maybe a bit of gossip. Someone strums a lyre in the distance. The tune is sleepy, gentle, like the city exhaling after holding its breath all day. You tuck your cloth earnings carefully into your satchel. It still smells like fennel and ambition. You're broke again, but you made it. Almost. Almost. Just a few more hours. Then you remember the peppercorn deal. And just like that, the day's not over after all. You glance down the alley toward the granary district, where shadows now pool like spilled ink, and everything smells faintly of dust, grain, and warm hay. That's where the deal is supposed to go down. Your little arrangement with the sailor who knows a guy, who knows a ship, that may or may not have been boarded legally. You sigh. Because, of course, the rarest spice you've handled all season has to arrive wrapped in mystery and risk. You stash the last of your unsold stock under a strip of cloth and press a flat stone on top to keep wandering hands honest. Your cart, loyal and exhausted, leans slightly to the left. You whisper to it, "If you're still here when I get back, I'll clean your wheels with real linseed oil." A bold promise. Then you pull your headscarf tighter, check that no one is watching too closely, especially not Typhon, and slip into the alley with the practiced gait of someone who knows how to not look suspicious while being very suspicious. Carthage changes at dusk. The sounds thin out. Voices drop. Vendors start closing stalls with the soft thuds of jars and sacks, and above it all, the seagulls get louder, perhaps believing themselves the rightful heirs to the city. You pass a fountain where two young boys are playing, their arms soaked, their tunics clinging. One throws a fig skin at the other and screams, "You smell like rotten barley." It's unclear if this is affection or war. You cut through the weaver's courtyard. Looms creak in the dim light, tended by quiet, barefoot apprentices. Threads of indigo and red sway in the breeze. One girl eyes you warily. Another one yawns so hard she forgets to mind her shuttle. At last, you reach the granary wall, a cracked hulk of stone that leans ever so slightly. You duck behind the north storage vault, where the wall still smells of old dates and rat pee. He's already there. The sailor, thin as rope, tanned like old leather, teeth mostly accounted for. He's wrapped in a blue shawl too fancy for someone who owns exactly one sandal. You nod. He nods. It's like a ritual, the universal spice dealer greeting. You got it? You whisper. Course, he says. From the east, straight from the ship, maybe a week old. You try not to drool. Peppercorns this fresh don't happen. Not to you. You're lucky if you get the ones that have rolled around temple floors. He pulls out a tiny sack tied with eel leather string. It makes no sound when he shakes it. Good. Real peppercorns don't rattle like beans. They whisper. He opens it slightly and lets you take a whiff. Boom. Sharp. Citrusy. Warm. Your nose tingles. Your eyes water slightly. That's the good stuff. How much? You ask, voice hoarse. 8 coins, he says. You laugh. 8? You said 5 yesterday. Yesterday I was drunk. You were asleep in a wagon of sea sponges. He shrugs. Business fluctuates. You offer 6 and a smile. He considers it, then takes your coin pouch with a wink. Tell no one. Tell me where this came from. Nope. You pocket the sack and take a deep breath. The scent clings to your fingers. Historians still argue whether Carthaginian merchants had structured trade routes with India or relied more on black market intermediaries. Judging by this transaction, it's definitely both. As you slip back toward the marketplace, sack hidden deep in your robe, the city has dimmed. Shadows now own the walls, stretching long and cool. You pass a man lighting an oil lantern, its glow flickering gold against the cracked stone. A dog sneezes at the light and trots off into the dark. Your cart is still there, blessedly untouched. A blessing from Baal Hammon, maybe. Or just the fact that no one wants to steal something that weighs as much as a small mule and squeaks louder than a politician caught lying. You pack up slowly, slipping the peppercorns into a sealed jar that once held crushed bay leaves. You scrawl something dramatic on the label. Fire seeds from the far shore, because customers love a name with mystery. And then, just as you're about to cover the cart, you notice a small hand reaching toward your coin pouch. A kid. Fast. Dirty. Nervous. You move quicker. You catch him. Not hard. Just enough to startle. He freezes, eyes wide, half expecting to be screamed at or cuffed. But you don't. You kneel instead. Hungry? He nods. Barely. You reach into your bag and pull out a wrinkled fig and a pinch of tamarind. Eat this. Don't touch coin pouches. He stares at the offering, confused, suspicious, then slowly accepts it and runs off, disappearing between 2 pottery stalls like a shadow. You sigh. Your coin pouch is still light, but your conscience feels less so. You tie down the awning, secure the jars, tuck the linen wrap in tight. Night has almost fully arrived. The stars peek through above the city walls, and the sea murmurs in the distance like it's gossiping with the moon. Tomorrow you'll sell that pepper for a small fortune, or a very large bowl of soup. As twilight slides into proper night, the marketplace begins its gentle retreat. Lanterns flicker to life, casting golden halos that puddle along the worn stones. You wheel your cart toward the edge of the plaza, careful not to jostle your precious jar of peppercorns. The cart groans, softly now, like even it is tired of arguing. The evening crowd is thinner, quieter, soothed by the settling air. A few merchants are still shouting last-minute discounts to anyone within hearing range. 3 onions for a half coin. Fresh fish, still twitching, look at that. Buy a scarf, impress your cousin's cousin. You chuckle to yourself. It's always someone's cousin. And then, just when you think the chaos has finally dwindled, the priestess returns. Well, not the same one. This one's younger. Her robes are simpler, but her posture says she thinks she owns the wind. And trailing behind her is him, the smug apprentice. You've seen him before. Clean hair, clean nails, clean everything. The kind of man who probably asks his incense for permission before lighting it. "We need a second blend," he says, not bothering with a greeting. You blink. Didn't the ritual already start? The senior priestess thinks your first mix is too meditative. She wants something more. Bold, assertive, elemental. You raise a brow. She wants incense that yells at people? He doesn't laugh. You sigh and begin assembling ingredients. Clove, frankincense, a scraping of dried pomegranate peel, and just a whisper of ground citrus zest. For warmth, you add cedar bark shavings, saved from a gift a Nubian trader gave you last spring. For balance, 1 crushed violet petal. You stir it gently in your palm and let the scent rise. The apprentice sniffs and grimaces. It smells like a mountain got married to a fruit stall. Exactly, you say. He tries to haggle. You raise your price. He folds. The payment comes in silver coins wrapped in temple cloth, a sign of favor. You tuck it carefully into your bag. Later, you'll rewrap your jar of stale anise in that cloth. Maybe that'll finally help it sell. As the pair turns to go, the younger priestess pauses. "You have a good nose," she says. You tap your own. "It's mostly guesswork and luck." She smiles, disappears into the dark, and just like that, you're alone again. Well, almost alone. A rustle to your right reveals the return of your most finicky customer, the temple cat. It leaps effortlessly onto your cart, circles the spice jars like it's auditing you, then settles near the mint. You sigh. Fine. 1 sniff. The cat lowers its head, sniffs once, sneezes theatrically, and leaps down. Typical. You gather the last few items from your display and begin the slow, creaky process of breaking down the stall. You fold the linen awning, now streaked with sunset dust and dried fennel. You wipe down the counter, sweep the spilled coriander into a corner, because someone will want it, eventually, and check each jar's seal. You're down to crumbs and memories, and that's not a bad thing. Historians still argue whether vendors in Carthage saw themselves as mere sellers or essential community hubs. Judging by how many people pass you by, nodding goodnight or tossing last-minute gossip your way, it's safe to say both. just as you're about to roll the cart home, your cousin Amilcar appears. He's chewing on a date and looks like he hasn't moved in 6 hours. "You didn't burn the house down, did you?" you ask. He grins. "No, but the cat's mad at me." "That's not news." He points at your cart. "You sell everything?" "Almost. Save the good stuff." He leans in and sniffs the pepper jar. "That smells illegal." "Exactly." He helps you push the cart out of the plaza, and the two of you begin the uphill trudge home. The wheels protest, your sandals flap sadly, and Amilcar keeps talking about how he's going to invent a spice that sells itself. "You mean air?" you ask. "No, better than air. Like spicy air." You roll your eyes. "Just don't use my cumin for your experiments." Too late. You groan. "We'll talk when I stop sweating." The path home winds through quiet alleys, past shuttered stalls and sleepy goats. A man is still sweeping his doorstep, humming a lullaby to no one in particular. A clay oil lamp flickers in a high window. Somewhere, someone is laughing. And as you reach your street, the smell of fresh bread baking for tomorrow hits you like a soft slap. You pause. Take it in. Remember what it means to arrive. You've survived spice spills, tax threats, and the feline judgment of 2 different religious authorities. And you have pepper. The city exhales around you, and you exhale with it. Back home, the courtyard is quiet, miraculously so. The cat's curled up in the window ledge, tail twitching in a dream. A single lantern sways gently from the beam above the door, casting shadows that dance across the cracked tiles like tired ghosts. You park your cart in its usual corner. The wheel groans one last time like it's sighing with you, then finally stills. You toss your headscarf onto the peg by the door and immediately feel 40% less constricted. Your cousin Amilcar flops down on a cushion near the water jar and sighs the exaggerated sigh of a man who's done very little but feels very tired. You kneel beside the storage amphorae, opening one to check your stash. Inside, 2 jars of cumin, a pouch of dried rose petals, your emergency jar of mystery spice, probably oregano, possibly crushed laurel, maybe paprika. And the day's big win, the jar of peppercorns, sealed tight and tucked safely inside a folded cloth. You hold it for a moment in the flickering light. It feels heavier than it looks. Precious. Dangerous, even. You smile to yourself and set it gently beside the others, a miniature treasure in a world of pickled onions and second-hand sandals. You hear the rustle of movement. Your aunt, appearing in the doorway, wiping her hands on her tunic. She looks you up and down. You smell like goat and garlic. Flattery will get you nowhere. She raises an eyebrow, but doesn't press further. Instead, she disappears into the kitchen, muttering something about how everyone's always out late and the lentils never stir themselves. You settle onto your mat for a moment and stretch your legs. The ache in your calves sings its familiar song. You consider taking off your sandals, but the strap repair is holding surprisingly well, and you don't want to jinx it. The door creaks, and a shadow appears. Your younger sister, eyes sleepy, holding out a small clay bowl. "I saved you the good part," she says. You peer into it. Lentils, olive oil, a single wilted parsley leaf, placed with ceremonial pride. "You are the good part," you reply. She beams, sets it beside you, and scurries back to her mat like a beetle who's just remembered it left the stove on. You eat slowly. The lentils are overcooked and the oil's too strong, but it's warm, and it fills your stomach like a kind word. You mop up the last bit with a piece of barley bread and let out a quiet burp. Hannibal the cat opens one eye and looks offended. Then comes the knock. 3 slow raps. You and Amilcar freeze. A 4th. You glance at each other. Neither of you was expecting anyone. Cautiously, you open the door. On the other side stands a figure wrapped in a deep brown cloak, face mostly hidden in shadow. "Are you the spice seller?" a voice asks. "That depends. Are you here to buy or arrest me?" A pause. Then, a gloved hand reaches out, revealing a small, cloth-wrapped bundle. "I was told you might have the fire seeds." "Ah, the pepper." You glance behind you, then open the door a bit wider. "Come in, quietly." The figure steps inside and sits cross-legged on the floor without a word, cloak pooling around them like spilled ink. You retrieve the jar, unwrap it, and place it on the floor between you. The figure lifts the lid, takes a long, measured breath, nods once. "This is exceptional," they murmur. "Glad you think so. It cost me my afternoon and one very suspicious sailor." They chuckle softly. "I'll take half the jar. That's half my profit. That's double your reputation." You squint. "And who are you exactly?" They pull back the hood just slightly, enough for you to see a face you vaguely recognize. One of the temple cooks, perhaps? Or someone connected to the governor's household? They don't offer a name, just a knowing look. You scoop out the agreed amount, pour it into a fresh jar, and seal it with wax. Payment is in the form of a coin pouch so heavy it thuds when it lands on your mat. You raise your eyebrows. They rise. You nod. "Tell no one," you say. "Of course. And if anyone asks, you sell cumin. That's all." The figure rises and disappears into the night like a polite breeze. The door clicks shut behind them. You and Amilcar sit in silence for a beat. Then he says, "You just sold peppercorns to a ghost." "Maybe." "Should we be worried?" "Definitely." But deep down, you're not worried. Not really. You've got half a jar left, a purse full of silver, and a growing reputation as the person who knows things. Historians still argue whether spice sellers in Carthage were mere merchants or secret brokers of influence. Tonight, you feel like a little bit of both. You lean back on your elbows. The air has cooled just enough to feel forgiving. Crickets chirp lazily in the courtyard. The oil lamp flickers once and then steadies. For the first time all day, you let yourself relax. There's still work tomorrow, of course. There's always work. But for now, you've got full jars, full pockets, and just enough mystery to keep the city whispering your name. And that, in Carthage, is the closest thing to peace. The next morning, you wake to the smell of warm dust and the sound of someone trying, and failing, to start a fire in the courtyard stove. It's Amilcar again, grumbling and swearing at the kindling like it's personally betrayed him. You sit up slowly, bones creaking like overused hinges. Your shoulders ache from pushing the cart. Your legs protest every move. Even your eyelids feel tired. The joys of honest labor. Still, the scent of roasted barley and mint tea draws you out of bed. You wash your face at the cistern, its water shockingly cold for a summer morning, and shuffle over to the courtyard. "Breakfast?" you ask. "Barely," Amakar replies, waving his singed fingers. "I think the fire's cursed." You pluck a smoldering twig from the coals, blow on it once, and relight the flame like it's nothing. He stares. "It responds to people who don't yell at it." "You're a fire whisperer," he mumbles. "I sell fennel, Amakar, not magic." Breakfast is a simple affair. Leftover lentils, flatbread, and mint tea brewed so strong it could remove paint. The bread is a little stale, but the mint clears your head enough to remember you still have half a jar of peppercorns. And peppercorns, in this city, are better than gold. You check your stash again, just to be sure. Everything's there. No thieving ghosts, no surprise taxes. Yet. Outside, the sun is rising fast, washing the sandstone walls in gold. You hear the calls of the early vendors already opening their stalls. "Fresh olives! No worms today!" And the bray of a donkey that sounds deeply offended by something. You finish breakfast, sling your satchel over your shoulder, and prepare for another day. But before you head back to the cart, you get an idea. You grab a scrap of linen and a small clay tablet, then scrawl a few words in your best, mysterious merchant handwriting. Fire seeds. Ask quietly. Ask kindly. You tie the note to your pepper jar, tuck it into a hidden pouch in your spice cart, and cover it with a layer of mint leaves. Subtle, tempting, secret. As you roll your cart out into the street again, you notice something odd. People are already watching. You pass the fig seller, who raises an eyebrow and nods. A couple of neighborhood boys whisper and point. Tyra, the fishmonger's mother-in-law, shouts something about spice smuggling, but in the same breath asks if you've got anything for her husband snoring. Word travels fast in Carthage. You reach your usual plaza and start setting up. Your jars are fewer today, half sold, half hidden, but that just adds to the mystique. You drape a piece of dyed cloth over the stall, light a small coil of incense, and pretend not to notice when 3 different passers-by slow down to sniff the air and look twice. Your first customer is the baker again, flour already smudged across his cheeks. He buys mint and fennel and says nothing about the pepper, but you catch him glancing at the covered jar. Next comes a foreign merchant, Greek, judging by the sandals and the smell of rosewater. He picks up a jar of ginger, frowns, then asks, "Do you have anything stronger?" You lean forward slightly. "I might, but only for people who can pronounce caraway without crying." He can't. He tries. Fails. Leaves. You're starting to enjoy this. An hour later, the cloth parts again. This time it's an elderly woman with a face like sun-baked leather and the eyes of someone who's seen too many scams. She says nothing, just places 3 silver coins on the counter. You raise your eyebrow. "Fire seeds," she whispers. 2 pinches. You smile, scoop the measure, and slip it into a wax-sealed pouch. She tucks it into her sleeve and walks off without another word. You lean back and let the plaza buzz around you. A boy runs by with a clay pot on his head, chased by a chicken who appears personally offended. A flute player somewhere is playing off-key, but enthusiastically. A potter curses loudly as a jug explodes in his kiln. Life goes on. Historians still argue whether spice cellars in ancient Carthage were subject to strict regulation or operated through coded reputations and subtle signals. Based on today, you'd argue firmly for the second. By midday, you've sold out of cumin, fennel, coriander, and cloves. You've traded dried rose petals for sandal repair, and one lonely jar of stale anise for an extremely convincing fake ruby. You'll try to sell that tomorrow as an amulet of windless sleep. You've made enough for the day, and you still have half a jar of pepper. As the sun dips lower, you pack your things slowly, letting the incense burn down and the air cool. The plaza glows in amber light. You hear Typhon's voice somewhere behind you, yelling about honest prices and real cinnamon, but no one seems to be listening. You take a final look at your cart, lighter, emptier, humming with the subtle residue of attention. Your little note flutters gently under the cloth. Fire seeds. Ask quietly. Ask kindly. You smile, because now they'll come to you. You're halfway home when you notice it. Your coin pouch is lighter than it should be. You stop, glance down, check again. Still there, but suspiciously thinned. You feel the slow realization crawl over your spine like an unwelcome breeze. Someone nicked your coins. Not all of them, but enough for it to sting. A few silver, maybe a handful of copper. Your first thought? The kid. But no, that kid from yesterday was clumsy. This was smoother. A professional's touch. Someone bumped into you, distracted you, smiled too nicely. Maybe when you were trading that fake ruby, or listening to the off-key flute near the potter's stall. You exhale sharply and mutter, "I'll take it." Amakar's voice echoes in your memory. You trust too easily, or maybe you just like looking surprised. He's not wrong. Still, you keep walking. The streets are quiet again. Orange light seeps between walls. A man with a donkey cart nods as he passes, his beast dragging what appears to be a mattress and a possibly unconscious friend. You tip your head in solidarity. When you reach your block, your legs are tired, your hands smell of nutmeg and dust, and your mood has settled into that Carthaginian sweet spot between grumpy and philosophically resigned. That's when you hear it. Soft footsteps. Rapid. Then the clink of something hitting the street. You turn just in time to see a blur. A kid, hooded, small, darting into a side alley. A pouch falls from their grip. You hurry over, pick it up. Your pouch. Coins still inside. Not all, but more than you expected. You glance down the alley. It's empty. No footsteps. No echoes. No voice. You chuckle to yourself. Either you're being toyed with by street thieves with a conscience, or someone decided a spice cellar isn't worth the trouble. You whisper, "Thanks," to no one, and keep walking. Historians still argue whether Carthage's lower classes formed a tight-knit web of support or just a chaotic survivalist soup. Moments like this suggest a little of both. Back at home, your aunt is sitting near the door, cleaning lentils with the determination of someone fighting a grudge. She waves you in, doesn't ask about the coins, just says, "You smell like anxiety." "Not new," you reply, setting your cart against the courtyard wall. Amilcar is sprawled on a mat, chewing on something that crunches. You eye him. "That my candied ginger?" "I paid for it. You paid me for it. Still counts." You collapse beside him. Hannibal the cat jumps onto your lap uninvited, curls into a lump of judgment, and immediately starts snoring. It's oddly comforting. Your sister passes by humming a tune she probably made up, trailing her fingers along the clay pots as if they're instruments. You make a mental note to ask her for a song name later. Maybe call it Market Dust Lullaby. Eventually, you rise. You wash your face again. You loosen your belt. You open the spice jar, just to look at the peppercorns. Black pearls in a sea of everything else. They glint in the lantern light, silent and fragrant and full of unsaid promises. You reseal the jar and tuck it back behind the sack of dried mint. You've got plans for it. Maybe sell to the priesthood again. Maybe to a tavern cook with aspirations. Or maybe keep it a little longer. Build the mystery. Let people whisper. Later that night, a knock rattles the front gate. Soft, slow, rhythmic. You and Amilcar exchange a look. He opens the door a crack. Outside stands a woman with a veil, her tunic marked with a brooch shaped like a pomegranate. Wealth, status. A scent of rose water clings to her. She doesn't enter. She just speaks. "I've heard you trade in heat." Amilcar blinks. "Spices?" She nods. "I need something that makes a man remember why his heart beats." You glance toward your pepper jar, then back to her. "Tomorrow," you say. "Come early. We'll talk." She nods once. Gone. You close the door slowly. "Is that what we're calling it now?" Amilcar asks. You grin. "We sell magic, remember?" "Sure, but I'm still charging extra if she wants saffron." Outside, the wind picks up. Cool now, smelling faintly of the harbor. Somewhere in the city, a tambourine rings. Dogs bark. Someone shouts goodnight in a language you don't recognize. You stretch your arms. Tomorrow will come with its own nonsense. But tonight, you're the spice seller people whisper about. Not bad for someone with a cart that still leans left. The next morning feels different. You can't explain why exactly. Maybe it's the way the sky looks. Soft clouds stretching like spun wool, golden light sliding slow across the rooftops. Or maybe it's the quiet hush in your courtyard, the kind of silence that only happens when the city hasn't quite remembered it needs to be loud yet. You rise early, for once, without grumbling. Even Hannibal, curled on a pile of rags near the oven, doesn't bother to open his eyes as you move around. You rinse your face, grab a chunk of leftover barley bread, and start preparing the cart. Today's stock is modest. You're down to scraps in some jars, just a sprinkle of cloves, a whisper of mace. You arrange them with care anyway. When you place the pepper jar, you don't even need the sign anymore. The jar itself seems to radiate mystery now. Amilcar stirs behind you. "Going out early?" You nod. "Special request." He yawns. "Don't sell to any ghosts." no promises. The city's still stretching itself awake when you roll your cart into the plaza. A few familiar faces greet you with nods, some with yawns, some with barely disguised curiosity. You see the temple cat prowling along a wall, tail high, surveying its domain. You give it a salute. It ignores you. Royalty doesn't wave back. Then she returns. The veiled woman from last night. She moves like smoke, silent, graceful, wrapped in a violet shawl edged with bronze thread. The pomegranate brooch catches the light. People part around her like water. She steps to your stall and places a small clay vessel on the counter. You open it. Inside is golden honey, infused with dried rose petals. Expensive, possibly rare. In exchange, you give her a blend unlike anything you've made before. Ground cinnamon, pink pepper, dried apricot skin, cardamom, and a final dusting of cracked black pepper. Sweet, floral, heat like memory. You name it, ashes of the heart. She doesn't ask what it means. She knows. She bows her head and disappears. You exhale. That blend, you realize, is the last of your pepper. Just like that, it's gone. But you don't feel regret. You feel clean, emptied, in a good way. The rest of the day moves gently. A young couple buys mint and asks if you know what spice guarantees a long marriage. You give them a sachet of mixed cloves and saffron and say, "This'll help, but kindness is stronger." A boy brings you a folded bird made from date palm leaves. In exchange, you give him a piece of candied ginger. Fair trade. Typhon walks by at one point, tries to brag about his new bulk cumin supplier, but even he knows the winds have shifted. His cart looks heavy. Yours looks like a legend. Historians still argue whether success in ancient Carthage depended on luck, lineage, or cleverness. Today, you know it's a mix of all three, and a very good jar of pepper. Evening comes slowly, draping the plaza in copper shadows. You sell the last of your coriander to a weary cook. You give away your final spoon of nutmeg to a blind man who says it reminds him of his mother's kitchen. And finally, when the lanterns begin to flicker, you close your cart for the day. It's lighter than usual, but somehow you are too. You walk home through the quiet streets of Carthage with your empty cart and full heart, wheels humming softly over stone like a lullaby. The sky above is a fading watercolor, deep blues bleeding into violet, streaks of apricot gold hanging on the horizon like whispered promises. It's strange, this lightness. You've had good days before, profitable ones, busy ones, days when the spices flew out of jars like they had wings. But this is something else, something softer. You pass by the fig tree near the pottery shop. Someone has tied a ribbon to one of the branches, purple, silk, fluttering in the breeze. A blessing or a memory. You let your fingers brush it as you pass. At the fountain, the water runs slower than usual, murmuring to itself. A child sings a nonsense song nearby, skipping stones into the basin. You don't know the tune. You hum it anyway. When you reach home, the courtyard is glowing. Amakar is sitting near the fire pit, poking the embers with a bit of driftwood. Your aunt is asleep on a mat, snoring gently. Your sister is braiding lentil stems into something vaguely artistic. Hannibal is stretched across your seat, because of course he is. Did you sell the last of it? Amilcar asks, not looking up. You nod. To someone who needed it more than I did. He doesn't ask what that means. He just tosses you a roasted chickpea and says, "Then sit. I saved you a corner." You settle in. No one talks much. The fire cracks. Someone hums. Someone else coughs. It's perfect. Later, when the moon is fully risen and the air smells of ash and mint, you pull out your last little surprise, a single peppercorn, somehow still in your pouch. Missed, perhaps, or gifted by fate. You roll it between your fingers. So small, so powerful, so unnecessary now. You set it on the windowsill, where the light can catch it. Not everything needs to be sold. Some things are just meant to be kept. Historians still argue whether the average Carthaginian lived a hard life, whether it was cruel or beautiful or both at once. You know the answer now. It was this. It is this. And it's enough. The fire has burned low now, its embers pulsing faintly like a heartbeat beneath ash. Your head rests against the cool stone wall. Somewhere outside, a donkey brays one last opinion for the night. The breeze curls through the courtyard, soft and fragrant, carrying with it the distant scent of roasted olives and something sweet, maybe cinnamon, maybe dreams. The city has gone quiet. The shouts have faded. The bells are still. Even the temple cat, usually prowling, is curled up on a tile, sound asleep, tail twitching slowly like it's chasing something gentle in its dreams. You breathe in deeply and breathe out slower. Let it all go. The clamor, the bargaining, the heavy jars and heavier expectations. Let them settle into the floor, like dust after a long day. You don't need to carry them into sleep. All that matters now is this moment. Your body is tired, but in a good way. Your mind is slowing, thoughts stretching out like cats in the sun. And your breath is soft now, even, calm. The stars above Carthage twinkle quietly, their light reaching down like fingertips through the velvet sky. You did well today. You did enough. So rest, spice seller. Let the jars sleep. Let the coins rest. Let the city hold you. You are home. You are safe. And morning can wait.